Well, hello and welcome to the Yellow Coat Club podcast. My name is Sean Little and I will be your host once again today. I'm really excited about today's episode, and the reason being is I feel like it's very timely. With the holidays coming up, I think that it's really easy for so many of us to, during a time where it's supposed to be full of joy and there's the lights and the parties and everybody getting together, and this time of celebration can feel so heavy for so many people. And so today I want to kind of, journey through, using some things that had happened in my life and talking through that, and really just offering potentially a different perspective or helping bring you into the conversation to see a different way forward. Like, the holidays don't have to be a burden. And, I remember when I was younger, and, this would have been during college, where it really was. I hated every time the holidays came around. It was like, how quickly can I get through this? Thanksgiving and Christmas became my least favorite holidays. And as I sit here today in front of you, I can tell you I absolutely love Christmas. And now that I have a little one, I'm like even way more stoked for it. Especially to be able to see it through his eyes. So before I get in, I do want to just, preface, as I have so many, other times, is, I am not a therapist. And so as that, or as not that, what I'm talking to you about today is not medical advice. It is not, advice for you to, go, fully live your life by, or anything like that. If you really do need help, if you are struggling and feel like there's something that might not be okay, my encouragement to you is to go seek that help. There are so many places, whether you're, in Phoenix, Arizona, if you're in, Holland, Michigan, where I'm from, if you're across the world, there are people and specialists that can be there for you, can walk alongside you. And so I just want you to know that you're not alone, but also if you really do need that extra level of care, go find somebody. It's, as the book, says, it says, be courageous, stop hiding and start becoming. And I feel like a lot of times it's very easy to hide behind, the fact that we don't want to admit that there's something wrong with us. A couple podcasts ago, I talked about mental health and, even people and their issues with medication. And, I, as somebody who takes medication for, my mental health, things that I'm living with, I don't see a problem in it. And my hope is that in your own journey that you could give yourself the grace simply to step out of hiding and get the help that you need. So once again, I'm not a therapist. That's not my background, but I have, my life experience. And so that's what we're here for. That's the purpose of all of this, is to, share my experience, strength, and hope, so that, if it resonates with you, or, there's somebody that that you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like this could be helpful for them. Please share it. That's literally what this is for. It is meant to be something where we share and we invite people into the conversation to be vulnerable. I don't have all of the answers. I haven't been through the severity of what so many other people have gone through. And that's why I love connecting with people. That's why I love hearing their stories of their becoming, is because, you get to hear some really deep complexities of like, wow, I would have never thought of that, because what I do know is my experience. And so I'm going to share that today. And my hope is that over time, you feel comfortable to be able to share yours. And I would love to hear from you someday. So, shameless plug for to connect with me. You can do that through the website, yellowcoatclub.com. I'd love to hear from you. But I don't want to get too off rails today. I want to stay focused. And so, as I said at the beginning, holidays are meant to be joyful. You think of, I was just driving back from, being up north with my wife, and our child's in the back, and, we're listening to the Christmas carols and the songs, and, have a holly jolly Christmas, and so you hear that, and and you think, oh, this is supposed to be a time of, celebration. Now, this is not me, trying to evangelize anybody, but if you, don't, you're not part of the Christian faith and you don't believe in Jesus or anything, like, the reason for the season, still there's, the joy that comes around, the gift giving and the parties and the getting together. But for those of you that, are prescribed to the faith and are followers of Jesus, like, this is the celebration day of when, Jesus came into this earth, and so there's cause for celebration. But so many of us, when we're told, or the expectation is that we're supposed to be happy, that we're supposed to feel all of this joy, I feel like negates the fact that during this time of family and the togetherness, it's real easy to feel the void of those who are not here. And it doesn't mean that, it's a person that had passed away or died. It could be a broken relationship. It could be an estranged family member that they're still living, but they're not here. And so, the holidays, when it's like, oh, the family's all getting together, there's that one person, or maybe those few people that they're not at the table. And Thanksgiving happens, and then you have Christmas that happens, and they're so close together. And it's like this big time of, oh, we're coming together. And, I don't need to, it's beat the dead horse. It's like, literally, it's just so easy to see, oh, that seat sat empty this year. And it could be a recent loss. It could be a loss that happened a long time ago. And, like I said, it doesn't have to be, the death of somebody. It could literally just be that they're not sitting here at the table because they're off dealing with their own stuff. And I have been the one that has grieved the people not at the table. And I have probably been the one that, was the one where it's like, yeah, Sean's not going to be here this year. And so living in that tension, what's expected of us. I remember, growing up, Christmas was this really big, celebratory time. And, there was the gifts and, the family was together, and it was just amazing, and my mom and dad were there, and I remember life. I even remember some of the gifts I got, and I think that we all kind of can go in our Rolodex and like, oh, I remember that one Christmas. And just for kind of fun, I lived in Houston, Texas, when I was a young child. And so there was a memory, I believe it would have been my 6th or 7th Christmas. We'll go with 6th. It is what it is. And I wanted cowboy boots for Christmas. We would go to the rodeo and stuff like that. And so I had asked for that. And I remember, we're in Houston, so it's not super cold. And so on Christmas Day, I remember walking through our neighborhood, and I had these, like the tall part was black leather and then the bottom was brown. And so I remember just walking around in shorts and cowboy boots and being like, yeah, this is Christmas. And so we have those memories. And I also have those memories that I remember, the first Christmas after my dad died, where my mom did the best she could. She filled the, tree with presents. We had the lights up, we had the family gatherings, we had all of it. And yet there was the void that, the man of the house, our father, not here. At the time, I didn't have words for it. You spend so much time being busy, trying to, keep yourself distracted. Maybe that's what my mom was doing. There was family, there was, all the activities, snow, snowboarding, everything. And yet when I look back, what were you supposed to think or feel? The most prominent person in your life, arguably, is no longer there, and not by their own choosing and not by yours. So as you've heard from my stories, my mom ended up getting remarried. Christmas felt really weird at that point, especially with blended families. And so I can fast forward through kind of the weirdness that was there, because then there came a point where my mom passed away. And that first Christmas, I'm not living with my aunt and uncle and their 6 kids, and my sister's there. My brother, comes up from Indiana. And so the kids are all together, but it's the first Christmas that both your parents are gone. And now you're navigating this new normal. And I know, my aunt and uncle did the best they could to make us feel special that day. They might have asked even, is this a weird day for you? But you're in a new family with new customs and new traditions. And yet that person that was supposed to be at the table, that person that was going to be sitting on the couch as you open presents or shared laughs is no longer there. And so Christmas felt weird after that. It already did, but it just felt really weird. And it's not anything my aunt and uncle did. It's not anything my family did. It was really just a matter of that void that I couldn't quite pinpoint. That void that I couldn't yet express. And as I've shared, I ended up going off to college and kind of forging my own way. And that forging my own way really meant that I kind of abandoned and walked away from my family. And so one of the few times that I would see them is during the holidays. I remember that first Christmas, I came back and, I had seen my brother and we were supposed to go over to my aunt and uncle's house, and I showed up without a present for my sister. And I'll never forget my uncle pulling us to the side and being like, you guys couldn't even get her anything. And, at the time I was, stoned out of my mind. And so it was like, already then I didn't know what I was doing, but it's like, oh, it's time to start self-medicating. And that is what I did. I ensured that self-medication became the new norm, because if that was the new norm, I wouldn't have to deal with all the feelings. Now, I wasn't sitting there actively going, man, I'm going to go do this so I don't feel anything right now. That was the craziest part. And it's hard to describe to people, but if you've been that way, or you've at least become privy to the why we do what we do, you could actually see that happening. Think of, there's this story in the Bible, and there's these two sisters, Mary and Martha, and Jesus is kind of, talking to the crowd, and he's at Mary and Martha's house. And so Martha's, off running around, busy gathering stuff, getting food ready. And Mary's just sitting at his feet, listening to him. And at some point she comes over to Jesus and she's indignant. She's like, do you not see my sister just sitting there? And it's interesting because he looks at her and he's like, you're running around, and yet your sister's the one that, she made the right choice. It wasn't about, being busy and running around and doing all of these things. It was sitting still in the silence of being in the presence of, Jesus at that moment. And so even, think of Christmas and the holidays, you're running around grabbing presents, you're do, never taking time to just stop and go, ooh, what is this all about? And so even when it came to using, whether it was, drinking or, smoking weed or, mixing them together, whatever, I wasn't sitting there consciously going, oh, I'm trying to avoid the thing that I'm feeling right now. But in every essence of it, that's exactly what I was doing. And so, holidays became even a more weird thing, because now I'm not only thinking of the void of my parents, it's that I'm the one that, it's not that I'm dead or anything, but I'm not at my aunt and uncle's house anymore. I'm not around my sister at the table. And maybe at some point they just decided, well, it doesn't matter that Sean's not here. I'd like to think that, they were maybe thinking of me or something, but that's not the point. Where I once felt that void, I then became the person that wasn't at the table because of my absence. And my absence was because I was off doing whatever I could to numb the pain. I was doing whatever I could to numb the pain. And in that, I know that it's selfish. I wasn't just hurting myself. Maybe at some point people are just like, yeah, he's not going to be here. But, to think that your family has chosen, substance or something over you is tough. It's not isolated to the holidays. People use so many things to just avoid. People use so many things to, step back and say, oh, if I could just isolate myself, if I could just, insulate myself, I don't have to feel that thing. Not right now. I'll deal with it later. And yet, how many of us deal with it later? We keep kicking the can down the curb thinking like, hey, I'll deal with that one day. Oh, I'll deal with that one day. And yet you wake up, 5 years later, 10 years later, like, oh, I'm still living that exact loop day after day, year after year. Christmas became on repeat where eventually I remember talking to my aunt and uncle and I was like, hey, I'm not coming home for Christmas this year. It's too much of a burden. It's too hard. I don't feel accepted. That was my new thing. I started making the excuses that I needed in order to make myself feel good about not going. My family doesn't love me. I'm not accepted. I'm the black sheep. People are going to judge me. Whatever I needed in my arsenal in order for me to justify why I was doing what I was doing. And that story we can come up with all the time. You can justify almost anything, if not everything. I'm like checking myself as I make that statement. But if you're hurting, I deserve to drink. Oh, that classic phrase. Oh, I deserve. My parents died, therefore I deserve to drink. My parents died, I deserve to hurt. I'm sad right now. I deserve to not show up and be around my family. I deserve. And yet all that does is make me a victim. I become a victim to my reality, never giving myself even the credit or even acknowledging the strength that it would take to step outside of that. And I remember that first Christmas that I didn't go home. Because I went to a friend's house. And that's when I started to kind of assimilate to and have this belief where, doesn't matter if they're my family. I'm now going to choose my family. And I was so grateful though, too, because to have, my best friend at the time and to have his, mom and his sister, kind of take me in as, like the other brother, treat me like a son, it did something. It did something in here. It did something in here. I felt accepted. And so I'm so grateful that even in that time of pain, even in that time of sorrow, God still sent people to be there with me. And I'm glad that I was at least coherent enough to recognize the blessing, that was even then. But I started using that even more as my reason for not returning home. And so, it also became that buffer of seeing my family less and less. Using whatever excuse I could to distance myself from them and using whatever excuse I could to hurt myself more. Remember, I hurt, therefore I deserve. ... And I had the gold star. I mean, orphan boy lost both his parents. He deserves a lot. He's hurting. He deserves a lot. And that story, that narrative, led me to believe that, there was my hallway pass to hurt the way I wanted, to do whatever I wanted, to not deal with the things that I needed to deal with. Truth be told, I wasn't ready. I could sit there and, I'm an adult, I can do this, I can handle this, couldn't even sit in the silence long enough to feel what I needed to. Sit in the silence long enough to just be. Kind of funny side tangent. I remember talking to a dear friend of mine back in, this would have been 2015. And, I'd always tell her, I'm like, oh, hey, I'm going to write a book. I said, actually, I'm not going to write a book. I'm going to talk the book. You're going to listen to it. You're going to get all the words and you're going to write the book, because I literally could not sit long enough to just type and to put words to pages and then edit and go through. I mean, that whole process of the book that I just released, I remember multiple times having that conversation going, never thought this was possible. Because if I slowed down, I was afraid of what would happen. And whenever I did slow down, it was too much. It felt too heavy. And so those times of isolation and coming down was, I chased them away. And my chaser away was being busy and using drugs and alcohol. So what I want to talk about today, though, is not just, okay, cool, I'm hurting. Yep, I'm hurting. And yes, I am also one of those people that, because I'm hurting, believe 100% firmly that I deserve ... What am I going to do about it? And I think that's one of the biggest things that we have to realize. I know I had to realize, is that it doesn't work. As much as, I think about my mom and dad being gone. Like, another Christmas is coming. The day this episode releases will be 22 days out from Christmas coming. And guess what? It is going to be another Christmas where my mom and dad are not there. And yet I could ask the same question. If I go drown my sorrows in a sea of booze, they're going to come back? No. I can answer that question. If I go and self-destruct and, start tearing down the walls around me and destroy everything and throw a temper tantrum, I deserve ... Are my parents coming back? No. And in the midst of that, I would end up missing on time with my son's first Christmas. I'd be missing time with my wife. I'd be missing time of literally just being with them in their presence and enjoying this time. And so not only do I end up creating chaos around me, but I continue to perpetuate the chaos happening right here. Sounds insane. And I did it for a decade. And I know that there are many people who have done it much longer. On the flip side, if I think that I'm hurting and so I'm not going to return home, I'm not going to go be with those people, I'm going to believe every single story that I ever made, because I did that to my family. They don't want me, they don't love me, they don't accept me, I'm going to be judged. Why would I go to a place that's just going to make me feel worse about myself? And so I felt this almighty badge of honor where it was like, I'm going to go wherever I want to. I don't need you. And maybe there was some, sick thought in my mind that I was punishing them, but at the end of the day, they might have been sad, like, oh, Sean might have been here. But they got on with their day. And I sat there and used that as my every excuse to drink and self-destruct. And so who was I hurting? Me. So the reasons are endless. The reasons for why we go and, do those things, they're endless. So many reasons to go do that stuff. Remember, so I deserve. And yet, the question is, to what end? Like, what is all this for? I used just a second ago the word insanity. And so at some point, my hope is that people have the same realization that I did in their life, is like, I can't keep doing this. Like, this can't keep happening. This can't keep going on. So What am I going to do to move forward? That's the big question. People say they don't want to change, and yet you think you're banging your head against the wall. Eventually you realize what you're doing. It doesn't feel good, but you don't know any other way. And so the question is, well, what am I supposed to do? You don't understand, Sean. I'm hurting. What am I supposed to do? I lost so-and-so, or this person rejected me, or, that relationship ended and therefore it's all useless. You still living? You still breathing? Because if that's the case, your time here is not done. And how do you want to spend it? A victim? In misery? Okay. I chose that way. And you want to know what it led to? More victimhood, more misery, and never, ever, ever made me feel any better. Question is, what's the path forward? You said a lot of great things, man. What's the path forward? And what I want you to know today is, and the thing that I have to keep telling myself is that all of those things are attached to feelings. We have them. My parents aren't here. Sean, what are you? I'm sad. Okay? Feel it. Sean, your parents aren't here. What are you feeling? I'm angry. Cool. Feel it. Explore that. Why are you sad? Because they're not here. I feel it right here. It's this void. It's this emptiness. I feel like I am missing out on a life that I thought I was supposed to have, and I'm angry about it. My sister recently told me, she said, when you're feeling angry, you got to figure out the other emotion because, anger always is a guest at the party. So like when you're angry, it's also like, hey, what's the other thing you're feeling? Who's it coming with? So even just to name those two, okay, I'm sad and I'm angry. Okay, cool. What are you going to do about it? Because my ultimate, I would never, in the past, I couldn't even sit here and tell you that I was sad and angry. Then I'd be, if you pointed out to me, I'm like, yep, you know what? I'm sad and angry. What are you going to do about it? And all I knew about it was that I'm going to go drink. I'm going to go smoke. I'm going to go, be busy. I'm going to go be at a party. Didn't matter what it was. It was anything to not feel sad and angry. Why? What's so wrong with being sad? What's so wrong with being angry? Is the sadness going to kill you? Depends on what you do with that. Is the anger going to kill you? Depends on what you do with it. In the book, The Yellow Coat Club, I say a phrase in there that was once taught to me. And it is, rage not expressed safely will be expressed unsafely eventually. Let me say that again. Rage not expressed safely will be expressed unsafely eventually. And really what that means is that if you continue to stuff those emotions, to not feel those emotions and just keep holding them and bogarting them and keeping them in here, something's going to happen. And those are usually the times that we look back and go, how did that? Those jaw-dropping moments where we turn into somebody else that we can't even recognize. Or we act in such a way where we say, hey, I said I'd never do that. Or we yell at somebody and say just terrible things. Say, how could I have been capable of something like that? That's what's at stake here. Because I didn't feel what we need to feel. And I can tell you this. You're not wrong for how you feel. the story you're telling yourself, 100%, most likely it's wrong. Now, I can unpack that later, but you're not wrong for how you feel. Be angry. You know? For my believers out there, it literally says, be angry and do not sin. Didn't say, try and not be angry. It says, be angry and don't sin. To me, that's that ultimate guiding light of feel what you need to feel, and also make sure that what you do on the other side of it doesn't just burn down the life around you and destroy people, whether it's your life or somebody else's. What are you going to do with that? And yet, I've said, I only knew the few coping skills that I had because I didn't even know what it looked like to feel. And if you read the book, The Yellow Coat Club, there was a time when, I remember telling people often, there were these moments that I would have where I was like, I just want to stand at the top of a mountain and I want to scream. I would envision that all the time. That's how I felt inside. I want to stand on the top of a mountain and I just want to scream. I don't want anyone around and I just want to scream. Why do you want to scream? Because I just, this gut-wrenching, scream your guts out, bloody murder, just scream. And that was something that I wanted to do. And I remember during my time with, and once again, write about it in the book, but this amazing, movement that I'm a part of called Warrior Week, I went through and I was at this side of a mountain in California. And I was told to, hey, go over here and scream. I kind of had a grin on my face because I walked up and honestly, my first scream sounded kind of like a, if you watch Lion King, when Simba does his first one, they're like, that's all you got, bro. And so, I did that and called my BS. No. Scream. Get out. Feel what you need to feel. And I just let it rip. And it wasn't the last time. And that's where I've heard so many different things that people do, and it's not one size fits all. Screaming into a pillow. You're not hurting anybody by screaming into a pillow. And yet it can be extremely cathartic. Like I said, it's okay to not be okay. And so you can scream into a pillow. One thing that I did, often was I would get in my car. I probably look like a freak to some people, but I would just get in my car and I would drive around. This definitely during my time when I was in Mexico, I'd go on these, back dirt roads and I would just scream in my car till my voice was hoarse. Because it was the first time in my life that I felt like somebody had given me permission to say, hey, you're feeling all of these things. You've been able to articulate it. Think of all of these dark, painful memories that you have. What is the feeling associated with? Well, I'm sad. I'm angry. I'm this. Cool. Tell me more. Now go feel it. If you could say anything about the situation right now, what would it be? Most people, oh, well, no. Think about the deepest, darkest hurts and pains that you had. If somebody said to you right now, what do you feel about it? Tell me now. You wouldn't look at them. Well, I'm kind of angry and, well, tell me how you really feel. And so that kind of started this ability to, first off, name what I was feeling. But also to say, I need to express this in some way. Now, eventually it wasn't Sean's just driving around screaming in his car, going absolutely nuts and insane. I'll still do it every once in a while if I've hit that point. But I can just as easily open up a Word document and start typing all of the things that I would say right now, all of the things that I'm feeling, getting it out. And so it's not in here. Because once again, if I don't get it out, if I don't express it out here, in some way, written form, spoken form, doesn't matter, then it is going to come out in a nasty way. And, if if this resonates with you at all, it usually comes out at the people that you love the most. That's really the sad part of it. It comes out at the people that you love the most. And so there's a lot at stake for when we don't feel. So my encouragement to you, bringing this all back, like we're looking, the holidays are coming. It is near. It's okay to feel. And I know, it's cool. I have a church where they have a grief group. You can go do a Google search. This grief group is literally other people that have been there and have been, maybe not exactly where you're at, but close to where you've been at. They've been there. And so during that time, you're able to go sit down with them and just talk. Talk about what's going on and have somebody there to listen. Or if you have a friend, call your friend and say, hey man, I haven't talked about this thing. I need to confide in you. We all need somebody that we can speak to and that will be there for us because we can be there for them. People say, oh, well, I can't talk it out. No, the problem is that a lot of people just, it's like right there on their tongue. It's that thing that you choke on. Can't say that. I won't share that with anybody. And yet, you continue to hurt yourself. You continue to literally choke on, what I think of almost as poison. You're not expressing yourself. You're not getting it out. And so, once again, I'll say it again, rage, not expressed safely, will be expressed unsafely eventually. And you're going to spend more time hurting yourself, hurting the people around you, instead of stepping into that place of healing that we're called to. Everybody wants to be whole. And we want to be, my hope would be that the reason think about it, we get sad because we feel like we're missing that thing. But joy is on the other side of working through that pain. Love is on the other side of being able to work through that pain. And so whatever you do, as you continue to go through the holidays, like if there's a phone call that you've been meaning to make, or somebody that you've been, meaning to make amends with, or, somebody that you just miss, you've been estranged from them for so long, just take those 20 seconds of courage and pick up the phone and just call them. Or if you don't feel ready to do that, go pick up the phone and call somebody that you trust and just talk to them and say, here's what I'm going through. It's going to be scary. It's going to hurt probably. And guess what? You're not going to die. I promise you, you will not die. But that 20 seconds of courage could be the thing between you and not spending another holiday just down in the dumps, hurting yourself, isolating yourself, feeling like you can't partake in the thing that is supposed to be this beautiful time. And guess what? It's not isolated to the holidays. Once December 26th comes, guess what? You still got to be you. And you are still among us. And so we are called to be reconciled. And so my urging to you is to just literally be able to just say, hey, what am I not pretending to feel right now? Where am I hiding? And what would it look like to ask for help this week? If you answer those 3 questions, you can go to a 4th and say, what is my grief? What are my feelings trying to tell me right now? And be honest about that. Because if you let it, those feelings, grief, loss, pain, anger, all of that, it's information. And it can teach you a lot. You just have to know how to wield it. So, as I finalize this, it's like, hey, holidays can be a time for joy and it can be a time for grief. And it's okay to feel both. But my hope and encouragement to you is that you don't have to numb the pain. You don't have to hide. You just need to be able to tell the truth, feel what hurts, and get plugged into community. People, we're surrounded by people because we were meant to live in community. Stop isolating yourself. And have that 20 seconds of courage that it takes to phone a friend, even talk to a stranger. But my biggest question that I could leave you with is, what are you waiting for? And if you're waiting for the perfect conditions, I can tell you those will never come. 20 seconds of courage. 20 seconds of courage. So thanks for joining me again today. I hope that this was helpful for you to be able to navigate some of those feelings, those raw emotions that we, they suck, man. They can suck. It is what it is. And yet there's so much healing and hope and all these things around us. And if you don't feel that, just latch onto those stories. I'm a living, breathing proof of, you don't have to hurt forever. You can feel what you need to feel and still also feel the love and joy and everything, not just of the holiday season, but all the days after that. We're human. So let's be more like that. Anyways, until next time, I'll have one more episode drop before the holidays. So if I get any cool feedback, maybe we'll reopen this. And also, if you disagree with things that I say or anything, I'd love to hear from you. It's really cool to be able to engage with people that way. So until next time, thanks for listening to the Yellow Coat Club podcast, and we will catch you in a couple of weeks.